Wherever you may be in the world, especially those in Brazil and Latin America, welcome to Excel Weekend 9. Now, hopefully, this session does not represent the weekend of the 3-day event. Hi, my name is Liam Bastick. I'm an Excel MVP based in Melbourne, Australia, heading up our boutique consultancy firm, Some Product, which specializes in Excel, Power BI, financial modeling, decision analysis, and data visualization, and we help out with consulting, reviewing, developing, and training. Now, this presentation is going to discuss Microsoft's exciting announcement from mid-November, just 2 months ago. Back then, they announced 3 new functions and something called eta reduced lambda functions, known as eta Lambdas, into the Excel family. That's at least given me the opportunity to call one of them Mary, so I may refer to it as Mary eta Lambda. Anyway, my weird sense of humour aside, these newbies make automating data analysis really simple, as long as you have access to all of these functions. And they're rolling out on the beta channel for Excel for Windows and Excel for Mac right now. Today, I'm going to briefly explain what lambdas are, what on earth an eta reduced lambda is, and then take a reasonably detailed view of the 3 new functions. So, without further ado, let's get on with it. To introduce these new functions and features that are available in the latest beta version of Excel, I'm going to start off with what are known as eta Lambdas. Now, for those who follow the stuff I write, I've been talking about Mary had a little lambda for quite a while. Well, now Mary ate a lambda, so she got hungry and she's digested it. So let me explain what on earth I'm talking about. Lambda functions are things where you can actually create your own user-defined formulae. And what I'm going to do before I go to this example here is just go in and say, right, let's type something. So I'm going to go here, equals lambda. And as soon as I do this, you can see up at the top, I get the screen tip that says it creates a function value, which is being called within formulas. And I can go in here and go lambda, and I can go, right, I'm going to go here and say, right, I want x, and I want you to add 1 to it. So we'll go x plus 1. Amazing. So what I want to do is create a function that for any x, it's going to add 1 to it. What could possibly go wrong with this? Hashcalc. Hashcalc comes in here because it's not going to actually do anything, because what the heck is x? We need to put something in here. So what I should do instead is say, okay, well, let's make that a 5. So that becomes my actual function. So then it works, 6. Or why don't I make it this value here? So B10, so it'll give me 1. So B10 needs to have a value in it. So I'll put 17.4 in here, and it will give me 18.4. It's working nicely. This bit here really is the function. So this is it, and then it's taking it on that B10. And so what a lot of people will do is they'll go to formulas, and they'll go to name manager, and they'll go new, and they'll say, right, I'm going to have a new one in here, and I'm going to call this the add 1 function. And that's going to be equals lambda x comma x plus 1. Click OK. Happy with that? And if I go here, start equals ADD, there's add 1 now. I can go to this and tab and click on this cell, and it puts it in. So that's really how Lambda works, and you can make those as intricate and as complex as you want. Now, what happens? Let's get rid of all this then here. Let's look at this example. I've got here an actual set of numbers for Q1 to Q4 for 4 divisions, north, south, east, and west, and I want to sum them. Well, that's difficult, Liam. Alt equals, we'll sum those, copy it across. Not complicated. What's the next problem? Yeah, I want to do this as a dynamic array. I want to have it so that I just type in one cell and it will propagate. And by that, I mean spill. So dynamic arrays, you go like this, equals, and you highlight this here, and you press enter, bang, we get the numbers in. And you can see that the formatting is whatever the formatting is in that cell. I've actually had this as a slightly different format a moment ago, so you can see it's got in that one, but it's not propagated through the range, which I think is one of the weaknesses here of dynamic arrays. Now, I can actually go in here and say, okay, I want you to go and equals sum, open brackets, take that range, but do it by column. Well, that sums all of them, doesn't it? And these have become superfluous. That's not worked. So I need a way of it summing, but doing it by column. And there is actually a function, what they call a lambda help function called bycol, which will do this. And if I go equals bycol here, it's got it in and it wants the array and the function. Well, the array is going to be this, and I want to sum them by column. So in order to sum here, if I put sum and not the autocomplete here that's coming up, and I'll explain why that's done that. Let's go sum and sum in here. And then I say, right, I want to sum and highlight all this, close bracket, and press enter. I get hash value because it doesn't know what's going on, regardless of whether or not I delete these. It's not working. This isn't how it actually works. You have to use that lambda function. The way the syntax works is A, it requires a B, but going in here, see what happens. This is one of the things that's annoying me now. I type in lambda, and then if I try and tap, it's no longer recognizing it. This new feature that's come in, it's not recognizing these lambdas here. So the autocomplete on lambda is really bugging me because I often type the first 3 or 4 characters in and then expect I can complete. But if I do that, it comes up with sum. I want to sum. So I'm going to have to type it in lambda, and then I'm going to say, right, for x, I want you to then go in here and sum it. So sum x. Close brackets for the lambda, close brackets by the bycol, and I get a hash spill error, which is right because it's a dynamic array I'm putting in here, and I've got a blockage. It wants to spill across here, across the columns, and I've got stuff in here which I deliberately left in. So let's get rid of it. And now it spills and it's summing them up correctly. And that's how you used to have to do it. You have to create this lambda function and put this in. And loads of people hated this because whilst IT programmers and those that are coming up as the youngers, the newbie ones, were getting this syntax, it's quite yucky. So it was like lambda x sum x, lambda x average x, lambda x min x, etc. And a lot of people just didn't get that you had to do this to get this to work. That was part of the dynamic array calculation engine. So this lambda has been replaced by this thing they call an eta reduced lambda. And this is making automating data analysis quite simple as long as you understand what's going on. And what happens is that the eta lambda is in there for certain functions, and it replaces the lambda x sum x, or the lambda x average x, or the lambda x min x, or the lambda x standard deviation x. There's various ones. And if I go back in here, here they are. And you can see the various ones. And this order is not alphabetical. I believe what they've done at Microsoft is put the ones in the order that you think you're most likely to use them. So it's got sum and average, and then it comes up with median next. I would have thought median would be next. I thought it would be max or min would probably be next, or count. But the various functions that you can actually use, by my reckoning, are array to text, average, concat, count, count A, max, median, min, mode.sngl, percent of, which doesn't appear in here for reasons I'll explain in a few minutes, product, stdev.p, which is the standard deviation of the population, stdev.s, which is the standard deviation of the sample, sum, and then the two variances for the population and the sample, var.p and var.s. And so if I go for sum, that's actually the same. Now I can tab, you see, as saying take the sum by doing lambda x comma sum x. That's just doing it, and that makes it so much more accessible to people. That's easy. I can go lambda, I've got sum, and I can go in here instead and put average. So if I go in here, I can't go there. If I go tab, that will work. Just be careful you use the arrow keys to do it, and that gives me the average of them. Or I can use the max. I can go in here and put the max in. Lovely. So go there, tab, max. Goes back to sum. This is what's driving me mad. It's driving me mad. It's not fun. Max is in here, you silly thing. Look, max, tab, Sum, what's going on? It's driving me mad. Go in here, max, have to click on it to bring it up. So for some it works, and you can read that as either SUM or SOME, whichever way you want, and that will give me the maximum of them in here. Now, if you can get round those little frustrations I've got because I'm childish and get easily frustrated, you can see that this is going to make your life easier because people get this. You don't need to have a PhD in astrophysics now to understand this thing. It's just a shame they've called it an eta lambda. I get why they are, I get the reasons behind it, but it scares people off. But it does let me have the pun that now, truly, Mary eta lambda. Okay, what's next? What I've done here is I've changed the data set that I used in my blog article, if you've been looking at that, where I had the date as a year. I'm going to go a bit more intricate now and actually have it on a specific date with some categories and items I've made up with sales and ratings. It's not based on any well-known Microsoft files that you can download in databases. I've actually pretty much randomized this data and created it. So I'll probably circulate it so you can have a play yourself, but you can use your own data. So this is the data, and I've put it into a table here, which I've imaginatively called, as you can see from the table design when I go in here, data. I'm sorry, it's not data, but I will say data when everyone says data table. Okay, so I know it comes from the Latin datum, but this is what I'm going to go. Now, the sort of like the helper function that goes with the eta lambdas is a function called percent of. Now, I'm in two minds about this. I understand why they need it because they want to be able to summarize using group by and pivot by so you can put things as percentages. Get it. But it is a very easy function to calculate anyway. It's just they want to make it one of the bespoke eta lambdas that you can just cite. But one of the problems I have with percent of, autocorrupt or autocorrect, I think as Microsoft calls it, has a field day with percent of. If I type percent of into an actual cell here, percent of, and press enter, look what happens. It just puts that space in, and it drives me mad every time I try and write an article on it or anything else. I get it. Perhaps they could have called it something else, which wasn't going to spit out. It just drives me mad. This does. It's been a real problem, and I found that it's been doing it in formulas and all sorts of things, and it just drives me mad. The other thing is as well, if I was actually doing a calculation to actually get it in, so I'm not explained group by yet, but if I did group by here and we did the actual calculation, so group by and go in here. I'm going to explain all this in a minute. So let's take the data category, and then I'm going to take the, we'll do it for the sales. This is saying I want to actually group the sales by category, and then I want to use percent of. I couldn't find it in here. And this was driving me mad. So you used to have to type it in. But unfortunately now, if you start to type it in, P-E-R-C-E-N, well, if I can actually spell it, never mind. So that's 2 attempts now. You see, this is what drives me mad. Percent of, and then see, I put the close bracket in. It's driving me mad. I have constructed this table, which will actually show how percent of would work with a function like group by. Please don't worry about the group by syntax. I'm going to go through that in a minute. But essentially, they wanted it so that percent of could be an eta lambda. So you could take percentages. So we could have it of accessories, bikes, clothing, and components as the categories back in here. If I just scroll back up to the top, that's what it's trying to do. Now, you can also summarize it as accessories and bikes. You could actually say equals percent of C4 and C5, so these two cells, as a whole of C4 to C7. That's what's actually going on here. So this can be used in conjunction with these two new functions or on its own, and it's used to return the percentage that a subset makes up of a given data set, as you can see here. In essence, it's logically equivalent to the sum of your subset divided by the sum of everything. And the syntax is percent of data subset, comma data all, where data subset is the values that are in the data subset and data all is everything. And you can use it like this. And the main reason they brought this in, I can understand, is that you can have percentages as one of your eta lambdas in there. That introduces nicely then that perhaps we should get round to explaining the next function, which is group by. And so to our two main functions that have come out, GROUPBY and PIVOTBY. To be honest, PIVOTBY is like an extension of GROUPBY, as I'll explain. So let's start first of all with the GROUPBY function that's come out into the Insider channel. It's the beta version. So if I go in here, it's not everyone doesn't have it, unfortunately, beta. I think it's a limited run at the moment. Fortunately, I've got it. But I don't know if I'll have it when I'm presenting live because I know people have had it and it's disappeared again, which is why I'm recording it. So if I type in GROUPBY, you can see up at the top here, it's giving me the syntax. I've got GROUPBY, open brackets, and then we've got how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 arguments. You look at this and it starts getting scary, but like functions like XLOOKUP, you only actually need 3 of them to get going. You need the row fields, the values, and the function. That's all you want. So the row fields, it's required. It represents a column-oriented array or range that contains the values that are used to group the rows and generate the row headers. So you can have it with or without the row headers, and the range or array must contain at least one column. It can have more, and the output can go to multiple row group levels should you wish. That's the first one. So we know we can just go in here and say, okay, row fields then, what should we pick? Well, let's go back to our data then that we're looking at. And I'm going to pick, let's go to data. I want to take the category. So I'm going to take this one, just control down arrow to get it all. That's going to be my row field. So I'm taking my records here, of which I've got quite a few. And that's the first one. And so that now takes us to the second one, which is going to be our values. This is also required, and this denotes a column-oriented array or range of the data to aggregate. And this array or range can contain multiple columns too. And if so, the output will have multiple aggregations, and it should have the same number of records as data category does. So, you know, this is what we're doing. Otherwise, we're going to have errors here. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to pick the sales one. So let's go and take data sales and take that down there. Easy. And now we come to the third one, which is the function. This is also required, and you can either have what we call an explicit lambda. So any lambda you like, we can do lambda x comma x times 5 to the power 7 divided by sine x or whatever you want, if you wanted to. But we can have these eta ones that I spoke about earlier, sum, average, median, count, etc., and percent of when it comes back. Although, as I say, percent of wasn't even in here for me, so I don't know if there was a little glitch going through. But I'll just keep to start off with sum because it seems to be the one it wants to do anyway. And that's all you actually need. That's all you actually need. So I'm going to say, right, I want to sum the sales by category. Done. Sorted. Let's just widen this column so we can see it. It's got the numbers in here. There's no formatting going, but we've summed it. So I'm just going to put in here. I'll put it over here a little bit so that we can actually see. So I'm using if error in case there's no formula in here. And I'll go, oops, do it right even. If error, formula text on this cell. And if it is an error, we'll just make it blank. And I'll just make that red in italic like I normally do, so you can see what it is I've written there. Great, and we can tidy this up and make this neater if we want. And you know, conditional formatting is a wonderful thing for making things move, and we can look at that in a moment. That's all we actually need. So that gives us our function by values by row fields. But we can go further. We can actually go in here and say, right, let's go back to this and look at the fourth argument. So the fourth argument is field headers, and there's 4. We've got no, yes but don't show, no but generate, and yes and show. And I believe that when you've not included the row headers, as we haven't, we've just taken the actual values for category and the values for sales, it defaults to 0. So if I put that in now and go 0, that will give me the same thing. If I decide to try a different one though, let's try a different one in here. We've got yes but don't show. I think that's going to get rid of the top row. So instead of 198.4200, it's going to remove one of the rows in here. Indeed it does. It removes off the top row. And similarly, if we change it again, no but generate, oh, this is beautiful. I love this one. You get row field 1, and it only does it for this record and not this. So that's not really generating row headers, it's generating a row header, and that's row field 1. But I suppose you could now wrap this up in a substitute function and substitute row field 1 for what it is you want. So I'm not really seeing the point of that at the moment. Maybe it's going somewhere. This is in beta, let's not be hypercritical here. And 3, yes and show. Well, that's going to be interesting. We're going to have here components, and that's clever because what it's done is if we go back up here to the top in category, the first row is components and it's treated that as the header. You see, that's how it works in this particular case. All right, so there the values of this. It's looking okay. I can understand why it's doing the things it's doing, except it would be nice to have the values here. That's not making sense. So let's try and play with this a little bit more while we're here then, and go through and say, right, instead of that, let's remove all this and go again. So for the group by, I'm actually this time going to include the header. So I'm going to take the header and then go down to the bottom. So this doesn't give me data category, it says hash all in there, so it's reminding us we've got to take the actual header. That means then I've got to do the same with the sales one. So put that in. And then let's do the sum again, just for comparing like with like, and close brackets. And it still gives me, in this particular case, the actual values. So it seems to be the default, still seems to work out here, that in this particular case, we're not having the headers in. If I put comma in here and press enter, yep, still no header. But now if I go for 3, so the 3 here is yes and show, it will put the category in, but I'm still frustrated that it's not actually putting in the sales item here, which I think it should be doing at this particular point. So things that may get fixed. This is what happens in beta. That people give feedback. I think it's brilliant. Rand array a while ago was the first function Microsoft released into the wild where they changed the syntax based on people's feedback in beta. And I think that's brilliant because it takes the pressure off Microsoft trying to think of everything all the time. Let people play and just say, look, don't rely on this function yet because it's not settled down. And then people can give feedback and get it working how people like it, assuming they can access it. So this is what we've got in here. Now there are other things we can do here. Let's keep this simple. Let's go through. I'm actually, you'll have seen in my examples, I've been going through in here and I've not been using these extra ones. I've just been putting this in and I've been putting my own headers in. And that's up to you whether you do this. So I'm going to put the category here. Oops, let's go up to the top and not click on the header here. So category, and we'll go here and put sales. And then we can give it little headers or something like that in here. Just going through, might center that one. To make it neater, I've been doing a lot of that because I've been playing around with the headers afterwards, as I'll show you in a few minutes. But it gives me some other ideas of what I can do. So you can put those in should you wish. All right, now I've put them in. Let's take them away again. Other things you can do, you can actually extend this. So we can actually have more in here. So instead of going data all and category, let's take it again without the headers, keep it simpler. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to this time highlight category and item and go Control Shift down arrow. So we've got all of those. And then comma for the sales. Here I'm going to put that in and copy that down. And again, we'll take this on because I'm very unimaginative when it comes to that. What that's done now is it's added the category and it's also added the item you see here. Let's just go back up to the top, you see, for the sales. So it's grouped it by category and item. So that's how we can put these in to get them working. And we don't have to do it that way. this is the easy way when they are touching each other. So you can just put them in, and that's a nice simple way of putting it in. But if they're not, there are other functions you can use. One of them is hstack. So if I go hstack, and I'll just put open and close brackets since I've got in here, let's say, right, I want to do it this time on the date, and I'm also going to do it on the wheel, or the items listed on that one, so that they are non-contiguous. And press enter. Now this needs formatting, so it's currently on a like this. So I'm just going to go in here and make it a short date. So we've got the short dates in here, and this is summarizing it by all the different dates that are in here and the different items. That works nicely. hstack is forming a stack of columns stacked horizontally. That's what hstack stands for, and it's categorizing it by item and date for sales. See, we can do the sales, and we can do the same here. I can decide that for this one, I can go in and use hstack here too. Now, again, I don't need to do this because they're touching each other, so I could have just highlighted them both, but I'm doing it this way to show you in case you've got a more complicated table. Data sales, and then back in here for the rating as well. And if I press, not sum, but let's take the average now, because I think it's going to get a bit silly. Average. See, I love it. Autocomplete. Drives me mad. Close brackets. There we go. We've got it broken down now, and we can format this by a percentage. So it's I need to show you the whole formula, so let's just shrink this down a bit so you can see it. But you get the idea of how you can put this together and build it up. And it's nice and straightforward and easy. And you can actually get cleverer than this. One of the things I like about this is, why not in the date and date here, let's change this instead to year. Let's use the year function on this one. So I'm applying a function to a header here and press enter. And of course, as I've done that as a date now, I have to just go in and change it back to general. There you go. I've now got that as a year. So I've included a function in these things and then hstack them. And I think when you're doing that, that's better than an alternative function I'm going to show in a minute for actually collecting fields together to put them in. So that's nice and easy. Helps you put it in. You can put the headers in if you want, but it gives you some ideas of the things you can do. All right, let's get rid of that and go again. Oh, it's exciting, isn't it? Let's do another group by. Let's keep it simpler again, because I want to now look more at the values and what you can do. So I'm going to go here. Let's take the year. So I'll go year of this one. And I'm also going to take the sales on that one. And now I want to do two measures. So I'm going to put in here hstack. Love it, love it, love it. I love the hstack. And you can't press tab. And I'm going to do this for two functions. I'm going to go sum. Now, this is what's worrying me a bit now. The eta Lambdas seem to have disappeared when you use hstack. You see, back to all the Excel functions. But I've got sum and I've got average in here. Close brackets, put it in, it's worked. So there are some little things that need fixing here, but we've now got it by year, the sum and the average, and it's put the headers in now because it needs to. So that got me thinking with that, well, okay, if we've got that in here, what happens if I start putting headers in? So if I start going that and yes and show, so let's put a 3 in, what goes on then? Okay, it's going to work. It's not going to knock off sum and average, but it's not going to put the sales. The reason it's put 2021 here is because I've not included the headers, so it's put the value for the first record in there. That's what it's done. And it's done it, not of the date, but it's taken the year of it, which is quite cool. Okay, so I quite like that. Now that's hstack. What happens if I do vstack? Now instead of putting them side by side, it's put them underneath each other, and this is an alternative way of putting them in. I'm quite liking this. It doesn't take long to sort of keep playing with this and start thinking, yeah, this is pretty cool. I'm getting quite into this at the moment. It's making sense. So it's one of the things that I can do. All right, so that's me playing around with some of these functions with hstack, vstack. I've even put a year in, and I've combined it to show how you can actually put in more than one, as I say, what have we got here? The row fields. We can put more than one value in. We can put more than one function in, and we can use hstack for the first two and hstack or vstack for the third one. And there's another function I'm going to come to in a little bit. But you can see it's giving me ideas, and it's automatically putting by default in the total for the sum and the average here. So it's giving you these as ideas of what's going on. So that's useful. Let's keep looking at the arguments. So let me go back to simple stuff again, because it only got to the fourth argument. So let me go back in here, and I'll go back up to the top again, and I'll take my category, keep it nice and simple, and we'll take my sales. And an alternative to keep selecting them is you can just actually type in data and then square bracket, and there is category, so you can pick it up that way. Unfortunately, that doesn't default to sum when you do it. That's one of the few things here. I don't want it to be data category twice, though. I'm getting excited by that. I wanted it to be sales. And then we can go back to sum again. Let's keep it nice and simple. And that's giving me where I started off in here. Right, so that's the third argument. We've talked about the fourth argument, so let's just forego that. So we'll go past that one, and we'll move on to the fifth argument, which is what they call the total depth. And this determines whether the row headers should contain totals. And here we've got 5 options. Now, if you don't put it in at all, it's automatic, and that will then put grand totals and, where possible, subtotals in, apparently. Whereas if you put 0 in, it will put no totals. 1 is grand totals, as you can see. 2 is grand and subtotals. And -1 is grand totals at the top, and -2 is grand and subtotals at the top. So you can just go, let's put grand and subtotals at the top. Let's do that one. Tab it, bring it in. Hash value, love it. Nice bugs in here at the moment. This will get fixed. If I put 2 in here, it's still giving me an issue because there are no subtotals. But if I put 1 in, it's giving me the total. And if I put -1 in, it's working. Now, these things will get fixed. It's just you need to watch out for them at the moment. Some people like to have the totals at the top, but they will get fixed. I'm going to leave it as the default here of missing, so it brings it in. And I think you're trying to force it to put a subtotal in when there isn't one. So these are things that, will get picked up now that GROUPBY is out in the wild. Let's look then at the next argument after this, which is sort order, which appears to be confusing a lot of people. I don't think it's that difficult if I'm understanding it right myself. It's another optional argument, and this denotes a number indicating how the rows should be sorted. And the numbers correspond with the actual columns in the row field. So, column 1, column 2, etc. If the number's negative, the rows are sorted in descending or reverse order. And if it's positive, it's going to be ascending. So you can also put vectors in here. So if you've got 2 things in here, you can sort by more than one category if you want. It's getting quite complicated there. I think I'm going to keep it nice and simple. So if I do this on, well, let's have a look. If I put it on number 1, that's actually press 1 in here and sort it. It goes accessories, bikes, clothing, components, total. It's in alphabetical order on this first column. And if I put -1 in, it puts them in reverse order: components, clothing, bikes, accessories. Now bear in mind, category is the second column in the table. So I think one of the things that confuses people is they think this is referring back to the data table, but I think it's the actual outputs this is referring to. The documentation, I will be honest, is a little ambiguous. If I instead do 2, the second one, and press enter, What's happening now is it's putting it in ascending order of the sales. And if I put -2 in, which possibly makes more sense, it puts it in reverse order to show you what's going on. So I'd expect if I put 3 in here, because I've only got 2 columns, indeed that works as I expected, that it should actually ref out. That makes perfect sense to me, and I think people have actually put in the various forums saying, no, that doesn't make any sense because there's 3 columns or more in the data. I think it's the output this is doing it on, and I think it's fairly straightforward. And again, it's the default. It's just here. It's not actually specified in the help at the moment what the default is, but I'll just put it back to that. And it looks to me like it's going to sort it in ascending order on the first column, but it's moot in here. And then if we want the final one in here, that's the filter array. So that's if you want to filter things in or out. So this is very simple. I can just go in here and say, right, I want it that if we go back to the data category here, let's go to this one, and we don't want it to equal bikes, and press enter. And there you go. We now have no bikes in here. So fairly straightforward. And this option, it represents a column-oriented one-dimensional array of Boolean values of ones and zeros, whether or not you're going to put a row of data in. It's got to be noted that the length of this the depth of it has to be the same as what you've got in row fields and values. So that makes sense. Why would you have anything shorter? But this is the general syntax. Okay, there is more here. I mentioned that I wanted to look at an alternative to HStack and VStack. Let me explain. I've cleared everything out, and I'm going to go again. I'm going to put the headers in. So I'm going to put my headers, and I'm going to go, if we scroll up to the top of this table, I'm going to put my category here, and I'll put my item and sales there, just dragging it across. And one of the beauties of them being in the 3 rows here, that they're going nicely. And I'm just going to give them headings like that. And yes, you could have used the header feature in the GROUPBY function, but I'm doing it this way deliberately because I am finding some of the headers go missing, as we saw, but I want to actually show a different function to HStack for actually putting columns together. So I'm going to go again with equals GROUPBY, and this time I'm going to use the choose cols function, choose columns. And this allows you to choose the columns you want. So we need to go and find the table. Well, the table we want is the data table. So I'll have that in there. And then it's what columns we want to bring in. Well, if we look at it over here, the columns are actually going to be the second and third columns for category and item. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to put here 2, 3. So that means bring in the second and the third columns. If I wanted to bring in the second and the fourth, I could do it. This is an alternative to HStack. Now, I don't think this is quite as clear. You'd have to go and refer to the table to know what the second and third columns are. So it is a bit of an issue there. But then if I bring in the sales next, and then let's just do sum again. I am very boring with sum, but it seems to be wanting to force me to do sum the whole time. It will actually summarize it like this. Well, great, Liam. We could have done that with HStack that you showed me earlier. What's the big deal? Well, let's make it more complicated now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, instead of taking this data and go this way, I'm going to put a match function here. So use the match function in Excel. So I'll do match with an open and close so I don't lose track of what's going in here. And what I'm going to be matching is the category here, B2. So I'll just anchor that. So it's $2. And then we'll go to the actual table and we'll scroll to the top and take the headers. That brings me the headers. And then we want an exact match, it's $0, and press that one. Then what I can do is take that whole thing again and just go copy and paste it here. But obviously it's not $2, it's going to be the next column along, so it's going to be C$2, and press enter. And it does exactly the same thing. Liam, that's amazing. You've written an even longer formula, and you're really encouraging me to use choose cols rather than the easy to follow VStack. Why are you doing this? Because, my friend, you impatient fool, I'm going to go here now and use the sort unique trick I was showing you earlier to go and get my actual categories. In case there are any, there shouldn't be, but I'm going to go here, put them all in, and just close brackets and close brackets, and that's giving me my list. And then I'm going to go here and use this in data validation. Now for data validation here, I'm going to go to the actual data tab, go to data validation, and we'll create a list. And that list is going to equal this cell with a hash symbol after it, so that if we add more columns, it will put it in, and click OK. And then you'll see we've got date, category, item, sales, and ratings. And I'm going to copy that and put it there. Oh, that's changed it. I've got category twice, so I can go category, and I can change this one to date if I want. Need formatting, or I can make it item, and so on. I've created something that is not so simple with VStack, I believe. I think choose cols works better. You need this little helper thing here, and that can be in an actual list going down a column rather than across the row if you want, no big deal. But I've got this. These now are input cells, and so I can change this to a different color. Ooh, that is lovely, isn't it? There you go. So it highlights that we can actually change this. I can actually do it by rating if I want. Pretty cool, don't you think? So don't give up on choose cols. I think that could be really useful for creating dynamic grouped calculations. Really, really cool, I think. No need to refresh data. It's going to be pretty good. Okay, that's GROUPBY. Let's now turn our attention to its sibling, PIVOTBY. I'm not going to spend as long on the PIVOTBY function because really it's just an extension of the GROUPBY function in that it allows you to show analysis not just by going down a column but going across a row as well. So it also creates a summary of your data. It's like a formulaic pivot table. It supports grouping along two axes, and you can aggregate the associated values as you wish using the VStack and HStack as I've shown you, and you can generate perhaps a summary of sales by state and year as you want. And as always, it's got lots and lots of arguments to terrify you. So if I go in here, I'm going to go equals PIVOTBY. Yeah. How many have we got this time? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8? Oh my goodness, it goes on forever, doesn't it? 9 arguments. I think I can get there in the end. You see, can't even count, and I'm recording it. I could edit it out, but I think it's there to show you can get overwhelmed. But again, you don't need that many arguments. You only need 3 to get this working. So the first one is row fields. Required represents a column-oriented array or range that contains the values that are used to group the rows and generate the row headers. And it can contain multiple columns, as I've shown you already. And if you do that, then it will have multiple row group levels. Well, I'm going to keep it simple here. I'm just going to go to the data tab, and let's pick up the category. There you go. That's the first one. Now it wants the second one, which is the column fields. So also required, this is another column-oriented array range that contains the values which are used to group the columns and generate the column headers. And again, you can group it if you want, but we're going to keep it nice and simple. But I am going to just add one little thing. I'm going to use the year function and do it on the date. Let's do that. There you go. Just make it nice and simple. And then what we'll do is we'll calculate it on, well, we keep doing sales. So let's do it on the rating this time, shall we? Because otherwise, why have we got the ratings in here? So we'll go in there and we'll take that all the way down. And then what we need to do is say, okay, for the fourth argument in here, we're going to take the average. And if I press tab here, it's not going to work, so I'm going to have to type it in, average, and press here. And if I don't, you see here, after that, comma, we've then got more arguments. We've got the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. So you can't even add up. It is 10. there are 10 in here, but it's scary. That's all you actually need. You just need the 4. So it's one extra required field than group by, because we need it both for the rows we're specifying, the row headers and the column headers. So if we do that and press enter, we get this nice little total. And of course, I can turn this all into percentages so it reads better if you want. It just gives us an idea of what's going on. The rest of the arguments are pretty much the same as what they were before. So we've got for the 5th argument here, it's going to be the field headers. And we've gone through that already about what they are and the strengths and weaknesses. Then we've got after that whether we want to put the grand totals on, subtotals, and we seem to have the same problems with that we have with group by. The next one we have in here is how you want to sort the row sort orders, so for the row fields, the accessories, the bikes, the clothing. And then the next one is how you want to do it for the column total depth. So the column total depth, that's going to say then, right, what are we doing here? Are we going to have the grand totals on and everything going this way too? And then we have the next one is yet another column sort order. So you're going through. And then finally, you've got your filter array if you don't want certain things in here. So you can put all those in if you want, but it's not quite as bad as it looks. It's just more of the same as it is with group by, but the complication is we need to double up on some of the parameters because we're not only thinking about rows, we're thinking about columns as well because we are using a cross-tab query or pivot table as it's known to its friends. But it's a pretty straightforward thing to put in, and it's not really that much rocket science, so I don't want to waste too much time on this because what I did with group by is easy enough to do with pivot by too. Finally, I want to just show you a problem that can come up as we all get cleverer and cleverer with putting in eta Lambdas and range names and lambdas and goodness knows what else, and some of the problems that can ensue. I'm going to put here the numbers 1, 2, and 3 just next to the data. I'm going to highlight those, and then I'm going to go to the name box and just type in here SUM to sum. Easy. I've summed it. I haven't. I've just given this range sum. So if I go here equals sum, and then I just press enter, I'll get 1, 2, and 3. No eta lambda in sight. It's put that in, which is what you would expect because it's not inside group by or something like that. Now, let's go and do one of the examples we did before. Let's go back and do group by, and I'm going to say, right, let's go to my data, and we'll go for category. So we'll just do it this way without keep linking. And then we'll go data and do it for sales. So let's take sales. And then I'm going to go sum. So I'll just go there. Let's tab for sum, close brackets, hash value. Oh, what's gone wrong now? Well, the problem is when you do this way, there's a glitch in Excel at the moment that we've actually got in here 1, 2, 3. This overrides the sum eta lambda, and so it's trying to use that range to do something on here. So take that range and apply it to sales and category. Makes no sense. So how do we get it? Because I've just gone in here and picked sum and closed brackets, and it's not worked. Well, there's 2 ways we can do it. We can delete the range name and call it something else, or what you actually have to do in here is you have to put in underscore Excel ETA dot, and then if you press that, it will work and give you the values again. So we've got them in here to put them all in percentages. I just need to put that back to (0), but you get the idea. It's now working. That then tells it, I want you to behave and I want you to use the actual eta lambda and put sum in. But the problem is we've already got a range name in here that's causing the problem. Let's keep going. I'm going to get rid of the X letter sum. I'm going to put something in that won't be conflicted. Let's just put average in for the moment. So we've got that going in instead. Now, I said we could get rid of the sum range here. So if I delete this column, you'll see now that sum is no longer a range name. That's not true. That's not how you do it. You have to go to formulas and go to name manager. Control F3 is the keyboard shortcut. And you'll see that sum is still in there with hash ref as the value because we've deleted the range. We've got to go in here and delete it. Then we've got no conflict with range names. Great. So now I can go back in here and I can go to this and put it back to sum and tab and close brackets. And it's still giving me an issue in here sometimes. So it's going through and say name. What's going on in here? Well, this is some of the fun and games that can happen in here with it. So you may have to go through a few times to actually knock this out. It's one of the problems with eta Lambdas that when you start messing about and putting range names in and taking it out, it seems to cause a little bit of an issue in here still. So we'll go back to the trick again. Quite frustrating. Excel eta dot sum, close brackets, and it works still. So even though we deleted the range name, the problem still seems to persist. We've got a hash name issue. Final go at this thing. Here I've got a different file which never had the sum named range in it. So it's not that I had it and I deleted it, it's never had it in. So I'm going to go back in again and just construct that function one last time. Group by. And then I'm going to put in here from the data table, we'll take the category, and then we'll go data and take the sales, and then we'll go and get sum. Close brackets, press enter, it's worked, no hash name in here, all working fine. Beautiful. Problems. If I now have the numbers 1, 2, and 3 and go alt equals to sum that, it gives me the right answer. Great. Now I'm going to create another lambda. I'm going to end where I started. So I'm going to go to the formulas and I'm going to go to name manager. And I'm going to have a new one and I'm going to call this name sum because nothing stops me from using sum. And I'm going to put in here that this is going to actually equal lambda. And I'm going to have three variables, x, y, and z. And it's going to be x times y minus z. Great function this, and click OK. X, Y, Z, X minus Y times Z. OK, click close. Right, so if I go equals lambda, that lambda, just to show what would happen with it, let's so lambda x comma y comma z comma x times y minus z, just to show you what would happen, and close brackets, and then put the numbers, let's say 4 comma 5 comma 6 in here, it will give me 14 because 4 times 5 is 20 minus 6 is 14. Great. Let's now type in equals sum here. Great. I went too fast. Let me type in SU. Do you see there are two sum functions here in the actual function manager? So which one's which? So let's go for this one. Adds all the numbers in a range of cells. Okay, let's do that and go for sum and just put 1 in. Yeah, that gives me the 1. Okay, the reason I've only put one value in for sum is because of the fact the lambda requires 3. So let's do that again now and go equals sum and pick the second one. That one. That's got to be the lambda one, hasn't it? Let's pick that. And that needs, oh, that's the same one. So the weird thing is when you name a lambda the same as an existing function, it will keep showing it in the function manager, but all of them will default to the pre-existing built-in function. But what's this done to our group by? Do you see it's automatically put the Excel eta in there? It wasn't there before, but it's needed to put that in now because of this conflict with another lambda out there. So this is something else I think they could make more consistent. So when you build a lambda with the same name, it seems to cope with it, but when you have a range name, it doesn't. So just watch out for these things. I mean, I know these are at the 99th percentile thinking, oh, I'm never going to do this, Liam. But these are minor gremlins, and hopefully, as the beta becomes generally available, it's going to fix it. But don't let it deter you using these functions. The eta Lambdas are brilliant, and GROUPBY and PIVOTBY are great formulaic ways of summarizing your data.